Hey, let's talk motivation. Look, if you want to be able to do any kind of change or make any kind of change in your life, if you want to get yourself down the gym, if you want to get yourself to change your eating habits, or even start paying more attention to your finances or your relationship in some way, or even just to learn something. My children are at school. They come home and tell me about the lessons they enjoyed and the lessons they didn't enjoy. And there seems to be more of those. And for me, the key piece that's missing is you got to start with motivation. So from you personally, if you're always relying on an external level of motivation, in other words, you're relying on someone else to shake a stick or to give you a reason to do something, then obviously you're going to be very disappointed in your life, because that's not always going to be there. And it's very hard to have that as a champion, unless, of course, you have someone who's a consistent coach with you or a mentor with you who is on your case 24 hours a day, every second, every minute of the day, to make sure you're following through or doing the things that you say you're going to do. So really that motivation has to come within. But how do you do that? How do you tap into that? So I have basically uncovered, or what I focus on, is there are four different levels of motivation. And they kind of go up in a ladder. In other words, the lowest level, I would say, is probably the least powerful in terms of finding that inner drive. The highest level is the highest in terms of being able to tap into a drive that will give you consistency and follow through. Now, all of them work, all of them matter. They can be used obviously together in conjunction with each other. But let me just get into them, and obviously you can then start picking them apart, unpacking them, and using them for yourself. So first level of motivation is what you might call the standard carrot and stick type motivation. So this is really where you are looking at consequences. So let's use the example of going to the gym. Let's say you want to work out and you want to do it consistently. Then from a carrot and stick point of view, from a pain and pleasure point of view, what are the consequences of going to the gym in terms of the positives? So you might obviously want to grab a notebook and a pen and start actually doing this as I talk. That way you know you're going to do it, rather than putting it off for later when you may never get around to it. So first level, consequences. So let's use, as I said, working out, going to the gym. So write down, what are the positive consequences of going to the gym? What will it do for you? What will it allow you to do? And just write all those down. Flip side, of course, what happens if you don't go to the gym? What happens if you don't go to the gym in terms of the impact on your body, the potential impact on your energy levels, the impact on your health? And maybe as well, to add to that, look at it in terms of consequences, not just right now, but also in terms of time. So, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, because obviously we live in an environment, and particularly where your body is concerned, not doing something for a day doesn't tend to have immediate consequences. Not doing something for 5 years will have an impact, and you will see it very demonstrably. For 10 years, will have a bigger impact. And of course, because all of us are fighting against, I guess, the natural decline of aging, then unless you're doing something, then of course everything is going to get weaker in terms of muscle. Everything is going to decline in some way. So those are kind of, I would suggest, look at those. So that's kind of your basic pain and pleasure, level 1 motivation, pure consequences. Consequences positively. And of course, what I've just said in terms of timings, like, what are the, if you don't go to gym, what happens over a month, 6 months, a year, 10 years. You can do the same with the positive, of course. If you go to the gym and you do it consistently for a month, what's going to change? What's it going to do for you? If you do it consistently for a year, what's it going to do? If you do it consistently for 10 years, what impact is that going to have on you? Because that obviously will literally change the quality of your life. So start there, write those down. Now, for some people, level 1 is enough. That's all they need. They just kind of go, they dig into the consequences and they've written these down. They go, wow, that's powerful. I've got to get on and do this. And they just go back and whatever they've written down, they reread on a regular basis to remind themselves, to reinforce in themselves why they're doing this, and to get their motivation kind of kicked in, fired up, triggered, so they go do it. For some people, though, that's not quite enough, in which case you can go to level 2 of motivation. And this is where resides what's called your values. So your values are the things that are currently most important to you. They rarely change unless you either deliberately and consciously change them, using very kind of specific processes, or something happens in your life, which is a significant event, or often called a significant emotional event, which causes your values to change. But values drive your decisions. So if you're finding that just writing down, okay, I need to do this because, I'm going to get fatter, or I need to do this because, yes, I'd look great when I look in the mirror and I'd feel happier, isn't doing it for you. If the pain and pleasure isn't enough, then look at your values. And what I suggest is values are what are called context dependent. That means they change depending on what area of your life you're focused on. But I would suggest write down this simple question. What's important to you about your life? And the answers to that question will be your values. So you might say family. You might say success. You might say love. You might say contribution. It could be any number of things, but you write them down. Now, here's the trick. Whatever you write down, you want to find a way to connect that to the thing you want to do. So, for example, we go back to working out and we look at, let's say family is important to you, like it is for me, massively important to me. Then the question I ask myself is, okay, so what is going to the gym? How does that help me support my family? How does that help me fulfill my value of family? Does that make sense? So you kind of tying the two together. You got to connect the dots. You got to do some thinking. And it's that thinking and bring it into the conscious awareness that is going to give you the drive and the motivation and kick your butt for you. But doing it internally, finding your internal motivation so you kick your own butt, not relying on someone else to do it for you. Does that make sense? So find your values and then connect the dots between the values and whatever it is you want. So, for example, if you put, money is important to you, if that's a value, if that's something that's of importance, then tie that to, okay, going to the gym, being in shape, getting into shape. How does that have an impact on money? Not getting into shape, how does that have a negative impact on money? So again, you're back to the consequences, but you're tying it to very specific values, very specific targets, if you like, in your life. Okay, so that's level 2. Combine level 2 with level 1, you got some very powerful internal drive going on for you, kind of like it's like a cocktail of motivation fuel. Now, if that's not enough and you still find you're not following through, level 3 is incredibly powerful, but takes a little bit more effort on your part to condition it, reinforce it. So this is where identity comes into play. So identity is who you believe you are. So it's a very specific type of belief. Now, there's a great story. I've used this before, but I'm going to use it again because it's popped in my head and it's the easiest one. David Goggins, ex-Navy SEAL, has written a book called Can't Hurt Me. Listen to him on a few podcasts with Joe Rogan and such like, great guy. And he talks about how throughout his early life, he kind of grew up afraid. He was afraid of his dad. He was afraid of other people. All sorts of things he didn't want to do. He was just afraid. And he kind of came out of school, got a job. It was kind of not particularly a great job, wasn't really going anywhere. And at some point, that was too much, as in it became an event which triggered something for him and caused him to want to really make a change in his life. And what he talked about was he started going to the gym and working out and getting strong and not allowing anything to stop him. So if he was feeling tired, he wasn't going to let that get in the way. If his body was telling him to stop, he wasn't going to let that get in the way. But what he talks about is he reinvented himself. He basically, as you listen to his story, he describes a new person, a new identity. And he literally decided he wanted to be that person. That's why identity is so incredibly powerful. I call it your future self. I talk about it a lot in some of the things, programs that I do. Is like defining who you want to be and getting very clear who that is in terms of being able to see them, describe them in detail. And then you kind of step into that and become that person. But we have an absolute need to remain consistent with the identity that we have for ourselves. So if you describe yourself as someone who is in shape, I'm in shape, I associate being in shape with who I am, then you will stay in shape because it aligns with your identity. And it's very hard to do the actions or behaviors which go against, or if you like, betray your identity. Does that make sense? Because that would fill you with a lot of guilt and everything else. It's like, that's just not going to happen. So you have to remain consistent with your identity so you'll follow through. So if you want in my opinion, one of the most powerful forms of motivation is define the identity. It's like, if you want to build a business that does 7 figures a year, what's the identity of a person who does 7 figures a year in their business? That's who you need to become first, not second, first. You step into and become that person, then you get the result. Does that make sense? This is where there's a kind of a misunderstanding. You don't get the result and then become that person. You become that person, then you get the result, because becoming that person changes your behavior, because it changes your drive, it changes your motivation, it changes what you focus on a daily basis. So level 3 motivation, identity. Define who you need to be that person. Your behavior will shift. You'll start working out. Now, all of that plays out. It's all great. There is one level above that, which is purpose. Doing things beyond doing something just for yourself. So if you have a bigger purpose, if you have a sense that what you are doing contributes in some way to making the world a better place. So it's not just good for you, not just good for your immediate family, although that will tie in with purpose in terms of contributing to people beyond you, other than you. So it could be like you, good for your family, good for your friends, good for the greater good. Does that make sense? And for me, that's where purpose really ties in. If you can create a purpose, and especially if you align it with your identity, your values, and level 1 in terms of pain and pleasure, you got incredible motivation, rocket fuel inside of you. But purpose really wants to tap into that sense of the greater good. So for me, and I've told this story before, you probably heard it recently, but again, repetition, I think years ago I heard that quote, repetition is the mother of skill. So it's probably worth repeating. And I will come up with some other stories at some point. But basically, between Christmas and New Year, I sat down, reflected over the last decade in terms of what I'd done, what I'd learned, what I wasn't completely happy with, and then projected out this next decade in terms of where I want to be, what I want to accomplish, who I want to serve. And then out of that, I realized that for me, the purpose was missing. I needed it because I wasn't feeling the full drive. I knew I wouldn't be consistent with what I wanted to do unless I could tap into a bigger purpose. And so I kind of went on a search. This is where there's a little bit of effort required. I went on a search to define what my purpose should be. And of course, what also happens when you do that is other things come into play. You start noticing things you wouldn't have noticed before. So I came across through Peter Attia's tweet, I came across a report about how the average lifespan in the States has been declining, but not because of medical science or anything like that. Medical science is still rocketing forward, still extending life. But the numbers were skewed because of the number of suicides, number of deaths by alcohol, drugs, and so on, which are called desperation deaths. And that really kind of triggered me in the sense of I felt I could do something about that. So even if I can help one person in some way, and my vision that came out of that, both for me personally and for my business, is this idea that I want to make a difference and help people really learn to control or master their mind, to be able to direct their focus so they can have a better quality of life. And if I can help more and more people do that, and it is really, that's what this video is about. It's like helping you get you on that path to taking control of this. If I can help more people do that, then the ripple effect of that should be that more people have a better personal life, a better family life. So if they have a better personal life, a better family life, there's less reason they would ever get into a state where they feel that they would need to even think about taking their own life. Does that make sense? So that's kind of the bigger purpose for me. So it serves me, it helps me because it means I got to stay on top of my game. It serves my family because, of course, if I'm staying on top of my game and I'm serving my family and I've got to show up for them, then I'm showing up. And it serves the greater good because there's a bigger purpose to this. I want to reach people who at the moment, maybe I've never heard of, they've never heard of me, they're complete strangers, but that purpose drives me. So 4 levels of motivation: pain and pleasure, bottom of the ladder, bottom rung. Values, what's most important to you, connect the dots to the thing you want to do and follow through on. Identity, who do you need to be someone who works out consistently 3, 4, 5 times a week, to be someone who grows a business to 7 figures or more, to be somebody who in their career rises to the top, becomes one of the best in the field. Who do you need to be? Become that person first, then the results will follow, not the other way around. And of course, final 4th level, 4th rung, purpose. What's the bigger purpose? How does it serve you? How does it serve your family? How does it serve your community? How does it serve the greater good? So put all 4 levels in alignment, and you've got an incredible level of motivation. If you want any help with this, of course, just drop me a line. But leave me a comment. Remember to subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Talk to you then. Cheers.